What interesting conspiracy theories you know? We are not the first intelligent civilization on Earth, perhaps not even in the top 50, and we will not be the last. So much has been lost, forgotten, hidden, or obscured on this planet that it is simply ridiculous. If humanity disappeared today, future generations would have nothing to discover. Maybe some debris? Maybe. All our information, all our heritage, all our history is stored on computer drives that will fail if I look at them askance, let alone survive and be readable in a million years. We will also leave no physical traces of our existence. I wonder how many other civilizations have risen and fallen over hundreds of millions of years without leaving much of a trace or memory of their existence. I always wonder whether the technologies of these civilizations developed in a similar way to ours. For example, did they have the internet and smartphones like we do? Or would their technologies seem very alien to us? I like to think that perhaps there is still an elite class from a past civilization that watches over us, controls us, but is integrated into our society. On a scale of 10,000 years, it is certainly possible. On a scale of more than 100,000 years, I would say it is almost certain. Humans are not as unique as we think, and modern fossil evidence dates Homo sapiens to approximately 200 to 300,000 years ago. Isaac Asimov's works made me think a lot about this. In this case, compared to the entire time span, it's like a fruit fly. I've been obsessed with images of Saturn's North Pole, and there's this strange hexagonal cloud pattern that people online call the Saturn hexagon. Some conspiracy theorists claim it isn't just a weather phenomenon, but actually an alien base or massive artificial structure. The hexagon is huge, about 30,000 kilometers across, and it rotates perfectly, which some say is evidence of intelligent design. Over the years, amateur astronomers and conspiracy forums have speculated wildly. Maybe an alien civilization uses it as an energy hub, or it's some secret observation post. NASA explains it as a natural atmospheric jet stream phenomenon, but the online theories continue to gain traction. The combination of mystery, incredible scale, and the fact that it looks perfectly geometric fuels endless speculation. Considering the number of cameras in major UK cities, I remember reading many years ago that a single walk through one London neighborhood could capture you hundreds of times. With the advent of facial recognition, I find it very hard to believe that a state that carries out total surveillance does not know all the major players in sex and pedophile groups. But the fact that they exist and thrive makes me think that they are sanctioned by the state, if at least they are allowed to operate. Lobbying, marketing campaigns, and artificially created consensus are probably the most common and mundane conspiracies that constantly go unnoticed. In reality, it's never a group of supervillains plotting elaborate sabotage, but always just a group of people with money who develop a strategy for how to spend it to make even more money. Yes, real conspiracies are boring, with boring goals, usually making money. And boring means, such as lobbying elected officials. And they leak like a pasta strainer. The more it sounds like a plot from a comic book about supervillains or involves complex Rube Goldberg mechanisms, the more likely it is to be nonsense. Has anyone else read about the dead internet theory? The claim is that most of the content online isn't made by humans anymore. Supporters point to bots posting comments, AI generating news articles, and endless recycled memes. They say that real people are a minority. I don't know if it's true, but I do notice a lot of repetitive posts across social media. Bots exist, but the idea that most of the internet is dead seems exaggerated. Still a creepy thought. Some conspiracy theorists think there's a mysterious alien satellite orbiting Earth. It supposedly started with weird radio signals decades ago and photos from a shuttle mission in the 90s. Some people believe it's been watching humanity for thousands of years. NASA says it was just space debris, but the theory refuses to die. It's probably just a thermal blanket lost during a shuttle mission, but still cool that people are obsessed with it. Found a website called Lake City Quiet Pills years ago. People online started claiming it was some sort of mercenary communication network. Users spent hours connecting usernames, server info, and timestamps trying to prove it. There's absolutely no proof, but the threads got huge. It's one of those unsolved internet mysteries that just keeps resurfacing. That site actually sparked a huge conspiracy theory online. People thought it was a communication hub for hired assassins, based on forum sleuthing connecting the domain to Reddit accounts and obscure server activity. No proof ever emerged, but it became legendary on the deep corners of the internet. Mostly coincidence and overanalysis, but yeah, it's a perfect example of how small oddities blow up into massive theories. A conspiracy theory is when you make up nonsense. Conspiracies are when we know something happened because there is evidence. Conspiracy theories are useless and harmful. People often don't understand the difference between expressing their opinion about a theory and a fact, including the person saying it. I think that's too simplistic. Evidence doesn't necessarily make something a fact, and there are different types and levels of quality of evidence. To be a fact, the evidence for something must be overwhelming and irrefutable. I prefer to use the word theory, literally, as meaning something that has not been proven. Just because something has not been proven does not mean it is categorically false. Many things were conspiracy theories until they were proven to have happened. I found a hidden page on some old forum that just had a countdown and random letters. Nothing else. That's probably part of the Cicada 3301 puzzles. People think it's a recruitment game for intelligence agencies or hacker collectives. The puzzles involve cryptography, steganography, and references to obscure texts. No one really knows who runs it, but it's been around since 2012. I stumbled on a mysterious Reddit account posting cryptic, repetitive messages for years. No one knew why. This was the Errata's account. People think it was some sort of encrypted communication or experiment. The posts were mostly gibberish, sometimes referencing dates or codes. The account vanished suddenly, leaving a lot of speculation online. Probably just a bored person testing bots, but the mystery persists. I started researching number stations, and the more I looked, the stranger it got. These are shortwave radio stations broadcasting sequences of numbers, letters, or even musical tones, often spoken in robotic voices. They first appeared during the Cold War, and many were believed to transmit secret messages to spies overseas. Some stations like the famous Lincolnshire Poacher or UVB-76 broadcast for decades with virtually no explanation. The creepy part? Even today, some stations are still active, sending patterns that no one can fully decode. There are claims that these broadcasts are still being used by modern intelligence organizations. Enthusiasts on Reddit and cryptography forums analyze recordings and speculate endlessly about hidden codes, covert operations, and the potential meaning behind every tone. The combination of secrecy, decades-long history, and strange broadcast patterns makes this one of the most persistent, eerie, and real-world adjacent conspiracy mysteries you can find. There's a theory about a satellite called the Black Knight. It supposedly orbits Earth and is extremely old, perhaps thousands of years. People first noticed unexplained radio signals in the early 1900s, and photos from NASA shuttle missions in the 1990s seem to show a dark, oddly shaped object in orbit. Conspiracy theorists claim it's an alien probe observing humanity, part of an ancient surveillance system. The story blends real observations, like strange signals in the shuttle photo, with speculative claims about extraterrestrial technology. NASA and scientists insist the object is space debris or a thermal blanket lost during a mission. But the internet has never let the story die. The Black Knight satellite has inspired forums, documentaries, and countless YouTube videos speculating on alien surveillance. Even without proof, the myth persists as one of the strangest orbital conspiracy theories in history. Does anyone else remember Dolly, the cloned sheep? That was in 1996. Although human cloning has been banned worldwide, I think cloned animals have been eaten for many years. Horses and police dogs are already being cloned successfully and on a large scale. I would even say that humans have also been cloned for many years. Celebrities look different from the original after a short time. A few years ago, I worked a temporary job digitizing old documents from the 1960s in a university archive. Most of it was boring reports and letters, nothing interesting. Then I found a folder labeled Public Health Aerosol Testing. The strange part was the location column. Several major US cities, including San Francisco and St. Louis. Inside were diagrams showing airplanes flying grid patterns over neighborhoods. The notes described harmless bacterial simulants used to measure dispersion. At first I thought it was a prank or a student project, but one memo referenced something called Operation Sea Spray, and it had official military letterhead. When I looked it up later, I realized it was real. The US Navy actually released bacteria over a city to test biological weapons spread. No one in the office seemed surprised when I mentioned it. One coworker just said, "Yeah, Cold War experiments were wild." Those tests really happened. There were several similar experiments during the Cold War. People today would absolutely lose their minds if governments tried that now. I recently stumbled across the moon doesn't exist theory, and it's bizarre. According to this idea, everything we think we know about the moon, its surface, phases, eclipses, is fabricated. Conspiracists claim it's actually an illusion projected onto the sky, created to manipulate human perception. Some even suggest the moon is a holographic control device or a massive alien construct that monitors Earth. The theory points to supposed inconsistencies in photographs, anomalies in space missions, and strange reflections during eclipses. It's widely ridiculed by scientists, but online it has a dedicated following that debates lunar observations, images, and NASA footage for hours on forums. Have you ever seen the hashtag 10-year challenge, the then versus now photo trend? Some conspiracy theorists argue that it wasn't just a fun meme, it was a massive data collection experiment. By comparing old photos with new ones, algorithms could supposedly track how human faces age, train facial recognition software, or detect patterns in social networks over time. The trend went viral, spreading worldwide, and many didn't think twice before posting personal photos. Online forums have threads claiming social media companies and governments use these datasets for surveillance, profiling, or predictive AI. Whether true or not, it's creepy to realize how innocent trends can be mined for massive personal data. During college, I interned at a small local newspaper archive. My job was scanning old investigative stories from the 1970s. One article draft caught my attention because it never got published. It mentioned journalists being contacted by intelligence agencies asking them to share information about foreign contacts. The editor had scribbled a note in the margin, related to something called Mockingbird, confirmed sources before printing. The story was abandoned and the note stopped there. Years later, I found out that Operation Mockingbird was a real Cold War program involving intelligence agencies and journalists. Makes me wonder how many stories simply never made it to print. Former reporter here. Intelligence agencies definitely tried to influence media during the Cold War. Not everything was a conspiracy, but some programs were later confirmed. My grandfather worked as a technician in a research hospital in the 1960s. He rarely talked about his job, but once he mentioned something strange. A group of researchers arrived with government badges and ran psychological experiments for several weeks. Volunteers were given substances and asked to describe hallucinations and emotional reactions. The strange part was that some participants were told they were receiving vitamins. Years later, when documents about MKUltra were declassified, my grandfather recognized the program name immediately. He never said much more about it, but he always looked uncomfortable whenever it came up. MKUltra was real and much bigger than people realized at the time. A lot of the documents were destroyed before investigations began. Ever heard of a mysterious Reddit account? For years, this account posted blocks of hexadecimal code with no explanation. People spent months trying to decode them. Some thought it was a secret game, others guessed government or intelligence experiments. Some codes seemed to produce text, images, or patterns when analyzed with the right tools. The account eventually went silent, leaving a trail of speculation and hundreds of Reddit threads. Conspiracy theorists argue it was a covert recruitment method or cryptographic test, while skeptics think it was just someone experimenting with code for fun. Either way, it became one of the internet's strangest unsolved mysteries. Thanks for watching, subscribe if you want more interesting stories, and like it will help promote the video.